Billionaire on death row asked to see his Jamaican maid. What happened next shocked the nation. "I want to see my maid," Billionaire Philip Jones said quietly, his voice breaking the sterile silence of the execution chamber. The warden blinked, unsure she'd heard correctly. Cameras froze. Reporters leaned forward. A man worth billions, standing at the edge of death, not asking for his son, his lawyers, or even a priest, but his maid? Outside Ravenswood State Prison, the crowd roared behind barricades, split between those demanding justice and those whispering that something about this case never felt right. Was this a final act of madness, or a message to the world? Before we continue, don't forget to click subscribe, like this video and tell me where you're watching from, because what happens next will make headlines across America, Jamaica, and beyond. Now let's get back to the story. The morning light slid through the narrow, reinforced windows of Ravenswood's maximum security wing, painting thin golden stripes across the cold green floor. It was a cruel kind of sunlight, the kind that reminded condemned men what they were about to lose. Warden Michael Grant had seen hundreds of final requests in his 20 years on death row duty: Bibles, steak dinners, tearful reunions, but never this. He read the note twice, as if it might rewrite itself on the page. "I want to see my maid." His maid. Deputy Warden Lewis repeated, disbelief creeping into his voice. Not his son? Not his pastor? Grant exhaled slowly. No. His maid. Sharon Davis. Outside, news trucks lined the prison gates like a parade of vultures. Helicopters circled. Headlines screamed "Billionaire rejects family, requests made instead." Sharon Davis, 25, was scrubbing the floor of a downtown diner when her phone rang. The voice on the other end was official, cold, and absolute. "Miss Davis, this is Ravenswood Correctional. Mr. Philip Jones has listed you as his final visitor." Her breath caught. The phone almost slipped from her hand. In her mind she saw him, the man whose mansion she used to clean, whose voice once filled the halls with laughter and business calls. Now he was a condemned man, and she, his last request. By the time Sharon arrived at Ravenswood, the world was watching. Reporters shouted her name as guards led her inside. Cameras flashed. Somewhere beyond the thick concrete walls, the clock ticked toward Philip Jones's execution. And behind those walls, one truth waited to be uncovered, one secret powerful enough to shake the nation. The metal door groaned open, its hinges shrieking like something alive. A wave of sterile air swept into the narrow corridor, thick with disinfectant and dread. Sharon Davis stepped through, clutching the strap of her handbag as though it might anchor her to sanity. The guards didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their boots struck the floor in perfect rhythm, a sound that felt heavier than the silence surrounding it. At the end of the hallway, under buzzing fluorescent lights, sat Philip Jones. He looked smaller than she remembered. The orange jumpsuit swallowed his frame, his silver-gray hair neatly combed, as if vanity still mattered where dignity had already been stripped away. His wrists were shackled to a metal loop on the table, the short chain clinking with every breath he took. 5 uniformed guards lined the back wall, motionless, their faces unreadable. Sharon stopped in the doorway. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to hold its breath. The man who once signed her paychecks now sat on death row, waiting for a needle. And she, the woman who scrubbed his marble floors, was the last person he asked to see. "Miss Davis," the warden's voice broke through the tension. "You have 15 minutes. Sharon nodded, her throat tight. She forced herself forward, each step echoing louder than the last. When she reached the table, Philip looked up. Their eyes met, hers wide with disbelief, his calm but heavy, like the sea before a storm. "Mr. Jones," she managed, the words trembling out of her. I don't understand. Why me?" Philip smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried both pain and apology. "Please, Sharon. Just Philip." She hesitated, her hands twisting in her lap. The last time she saw him, he was standing on the grand staircase of his mansion, giving orders to caterers before a charity gala. Cameras, guests, laughter. His world had sparkled then. Now it was cold steel, yellow walls, and eyes watching from every corner. "I shouldn't have called you here," he said quietly. "It isn't fair. But you're the only person I can trust." The words struck her harder than she expected. Trust? From a man who had everything: money, lawyers, power? What could she possibly offer him now? "Philip," she whispered, uncertain if using his first name was allowed. They say you killed Mr. Reed. He looked away, the muscle in his jaw tightening. They say a lot of things. The silence between them stretched, heavy and awkward. One of the guards coughed softly, shifting his weight. Sharon glanced at them nervously. Philip leaned closer, lowering his voice. Do you remember those nights at the mansion, when I'd still be in the office after midnight? She nodded slowly. You were always on the phone. I could hear you through the hallway sometimes, arguing with someone. He gave a hollow laugh. Thomas Reed. My business partner. My oldest friend. I thought we were building something good, something that would outlive us both. Sharon's mind flickered back. She remembered dusting the bookshelves near his study, hearing fragments of heated conversations through the half-closed door. You're crossing a line, Thomas. I'm crossing the line? You have no idea who you're dealing with. Then tell me who I'm really dealing with. She had backed away quietly then, pretending not to hear. Just another maid trying to stay invisible. Now, seeing Philip's eyes clouded with regret, she realized those late-night arguments hadn't been about business. They had been about survival. They think I killed him, Philip said, his voice low. But I didn't. I found something I wasn't supposed to. Sharon frowned. Found what? The truth, he said simply. About my own foundation. Her brow furrowed. The charity? He nodded. The Global Relief Fund. The one that was supposed to fight poverty, build schools, feed children. That was the dream. But somewhere along the line, it became something else. A machine. A front. He glanced at the guards, still stone-faced, but listening. He leaned closer across the table. They used my name, my reputation. Money came in from donors all over the world, but most of it never reached the people who needed it. It went offshore. To shell companies, to defense contractors, to politicians' accounts. They used the foundation to fund covert operations and line their own pockets. Sharon shook her head. That doesn't make sense. You're saying, people in government. He nodded again. And corporations. Banks. Even judges. The system isn't broken, Sharon. It's designed this way. Thomas discovered it too late. He wanted to go public. They made sure he couldn't. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest. So they killed him? Yes. Philip's eyes burned with something between fury and sorrow. And they made it look like I did it. Every document, every transfer, every message, it all points to me. Because they built the evidence before I even knew the trap was set. He drew a slow breath. They're not punishing me for what I did, Sharon. They're silencing me for what I found. The hum of the fluorescent lights filled the silence that followed. Sharon's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. But why me? Why call for me now? Philip studied her face for a long moment. Because no one sees you, Sharon. And that's your greatest strength. She blinked. What do you mean? When I met you 6 years ago, you moved through the house like a ghost. You never asked questions, never got in the way. But you saw everything. You heard everything. The people who came to that house, the deals they made, the secrets they whispered, they never noticed you. And that's why you're the only person I trust with this. He lifted his cuffed hands slowly. A guard tensed but didn't intervene. From around his wrist, Philip twisted loose a heavy silver watch, expensive, polished, oddly out of place in the bleak room. He set it on the table between them. Sharon looked at it, confused. Your watch. Not just a watch, he murmured. Inside it is everything. Proof of what they've done. She stared at him, uncomprehending. I don't. Listen carefully, he interrupted. There's a microchip inside the back plate. It holds documents, recordings, transfers, all of it. Enough to bring down the men who put me here. But you can't trust anyone, Sharon. Not the guards. Not the police. Not even the FBI. Especially not anyone wearing a badge. Her throat tightened. I don't know what to do with something like that. You'll know when the time comes. His tone softened. There's a journalist, Maya Torres. Independent, fearless. She's the only one who won't sell the story to the highest bidder. Find her. Give her the truth. Her hands trembled as she reached for the watch. It was heavier than she expected, its polished surface cold against her skin. Philip's eyes lingered on her. Whatever happens, don't come back here. Once you leave, they'll come for you. You'll think it's paranoia, but you'll see. They'll do anything to bury what's in that watch. She tried to steady her breathing. Mr. Jones, Philip, I can't. You must, he said firmly. Because after tonight, I won't be here to protect it. The words hit her like a physical blow. He was already talking like a dead man. A sharp buzz echoed from the intercom. The warden's voice followed, "Time's up." 2 guards stepped forward. Sharon panicked, her voice cracking. Wait, I still. Philip shook his head gently. No. You've heard enough. The guards pulled her chair back. She stood reluctantly, the watch clutched tight in her fist. Philip's chains rattled as he adjusted in his seat, his gaze fixed on her. Sharon, he called softly. She paused at the doorway. He looked directly into her eyes. Whatever you do, don't let them rewrite this story. The guards pushed her forward before she could answer. The heavy door closed behind her with a metallic thud, sealing him back into his cage. In the corridor, Sharon stopped, heart hammering, the echo of his words repeating in her mind. Don't trust anyone wearing a badge. As she walked past the final checkpoint, the warden's voice drifted from a nearby office. Make sure the recording of that visit's destroyed, someone said. Another voice replied quietly, already done. Sharon froze, her pulse spiking, but said nothing. Outside, the sun was setting behind the prison walls, bleeding red and gold into the sky. The air was thick with noise, reporters shouting, cameras flashing, but all she could hear was the soft click of the watch in her pocket. Inside it lay the truth. And the moment she stepped beyond those gates, her life would never be the same again. The world outside Ravenswood Prison was chaotic. Cameras flashed like lightning. Reporters surged forward, microphones thrust toward Sharon's face, shouting questions that blurred together into a storm of noise. Miss Davis. Why did he ask for you? Did he confess anything? Is it true he gave you something before the guards took him? She kept her head down, her trembling hands wrapped tightly around the small silver wristwatch hidden inside her coat pocket. The metal was cold against her palm, heavier than it should have been. Every instinct told her to keep walking, not to look back. Security officers pushed through the crowd, forming a human wall around her. She slipped past the blinding lights, her heart pounding as the crowd's roar faded into the night. By the time she reached the edge of the parking lot, her legs were shaking. She managed to find a quiet corner near a concrete pillar, away from the press. Only then did she let herself breathe. The moon hung low, a pale coin above the razor-wire fences. The air smelled of asphalt and fear. Sharon slid into the back seat of a waiting cab, whispering her address. The driver, a quiet middle-aged man with kind eyes, nodded without a word. The moment the car started rolling, she pressed her forehead to the cool glass, trying to steady her racing mind. Philip Jones's last words echoed inside her. Inside this is everything. Keep it safe. Don't trust anyone wearing a badge. She thought she'd seen desperation in men before, drunks at the diner, beggars on Kingston Avenue, but the look in Philip's eyes was something else. It wasn't the fear of dying. It was the fear of being forgotten. By the time Sharon reached her small apartment on the south side of the city, the adrenaline had worn off, leaving only exhaustion and unease. Her building was old, its narrow hallways lined with flickering lights. The elevator hadn't worked in months, so she climbed the 4 flights of stairs, her footsteps echoing against the peeling walls. Inside her apartment, she dropped her bag on the couch and turned on a single lamp. The yellow light filled the room with soft warmth. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe, to believe she was safe. Then her eyes drifted to the watch. She placed it gently on the table, staring at it as though it might whisper the answers itself. A sleek silver Rolex, nothing extraordinary for a billionaire. But Philip's words made it feel like a live wire. Sharon turned it over, tracing her finger along the backplate. Nothing. No engravings, no markings. Just cold metal. She hesitated, then tried to pry the case open with a butter knife. The edge slipped, cutting her finger slightly. Damn it, she hissed, sucking the blood away. Whatever was inside, if anything, wasn't meant to be found easily. The television hummed softly in the background. News anchors were dissecting the day's events. Billionaire and convicted murderer Philip Jones spent his final day on death row meeting a former employee, a domestic worker identified as Sharon Davis. Speculation is mounting about why Mr. Jones chose to see her instead of his family or legal team. Sources say his execution is still scheduled for Friday at 9 p.m., barring a last-minute appeal. Sharon muted the TV. The sound of her own heartbeat was loud enough. She poured herself a glass of water and sat on the edge of the couch, the city's distant sirens threading through the night. The world outside kept moving, cars, voices, laughter somewhere below, but inside her tiny apartment, time felt frozen. She picked up the watch again. Her reflection looked back at her in the polished glass, eyes red, face pale, expression haunted. And then, her phone buzzed. She jumped, nearly dropping the glass. The screen glowed with an unknown number. For a second, she considered ignoring it. But something, a pull, a curiosity she couldn't explain, made her swipe to answer. Hello. Static. Then a low voice, calm and unhurried. We know what he gave you. Her breath caught. Who is this? Silence. A faint clicking sound, like someone adjusting their headset. Leave it. Tonight. Or you'll never see tomorrow. The line went dead. The glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Her pulse roared in her ears. She grabbed the phone again, checking for the number, but it was already gone. No caller ID, no trace. What the hell is happening? She whispered. Before she could collect herself, the phone rang again. The same unknown number. She froze, staring at it. 1 ring. 2. She answered, hand trembling. Stop calling me. A different voice this time. Older. Calm. The kind of calm that made her stomach twist. Miss Davis. You're in danger. They're watching you. Stay silent and stay away from the prison. You don't know what you've stepped into. Who are you? Someone who tried to help him once. Don't make the same mistake I did. Help who? Philip. But the line went dead again. The silence that followed was unbearable. Then, something shifted outside. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. Sharon turned off the light instinctively, plunging the room into shadow. Her breathing slowed. She listened. Another sound, soft, measured footsteps. Someone was there. She crept toward the window, careful not to step on the shards of glass. Outside, across the street, a black SUV idled under a streetlight. Its headlights were off. She couldn't see who was inside. A silhouette moved past her window, a shadow on the other side of the thin curtain. Sharon's throat tightened. They found me. She clutched the watch, slipping it into her pocket, and backed away from the window. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Another creak. Then, 3 slow knocks on her door. Not loud. Not impatient. Just deliberate. Miss Davis, a man's voice said, muffled through the door. We'd like to ask you a few questions. It's about Mr. Jones. The words should have sounded official, but something was off. Too smooth. Too rehearsed. You're with the police? She asked, her voice shaking. That's right, ma'am. Please open up. She hesitated. Philip's warning echoed again. Don't trust anyone wearing a badge. She looked through the peephole. 2 men in suits stood outside. No uniforms. One held a folder, the other kept his hand in his pocket, on a gun maybe. Her breath caught. She whispered a silent prayer, turned, and ran. The back hallway was narrow and dark. Her bare feet slapped against the cold linoleum as she sprinted toward the fire exit. Behind her, the door rattled, then crashed open. Miss Davis. Stop. Their footsteps thundered closer. Sharon shoved the fire door open and burst into the stairwell. The icy night air hit her like a wave. She flew down the stairs, gripping the rusted railing for balance. A gunshot cracked above her. The sound echoed like thunder in the narrow shaft. Sparks jumped off the metal as a bullet grazed the railing. They're shooting at me. She didn't think, she just ran. By the time she reached the bottom, her lungs were on fire. She kicked the final door open and stumbled into the alley. Cold rain was falling now, thin and relentless. The world blurred into gray and silver. She didn't stop to look back. The black SUV from earlier was gone, but she could still feel eyes on her. She darted through side streets, past dumpsters and neon lights flickering from half-shuttered bars. Her breath came in ragged gasps. The city seemed unfamiliar now, every shadow a threat, every face a suspect. Finally, she ducked beneath an old awning behind a grocery store and collapsed against the wall. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. The watch was still in her pocket. Somehow, she'd managed not to lose it. She pulled it out, staring at the faint scratches along the edge. Inside, this is everything. She didn't know what everything meant. Evidence, maybe? Proof of whatever Philip had uncovered? But now people were willing to kill for it. Rainwater dripped down her face. She felt the cut on her finger sting again, sharp and real. Okay, she whispered to herself. Think. Who could she trust? The police? No, Philip's warning made that clear. The press? Impossible. They'd tear her apart for a story. Then she remembered something. A face. A man who'd once come to the mansion years ago. Quiet, polite, wearing the same badge Philip now distrusted. He'd told her to call him Tony. Said he worked with internal affairs. He'd given her a card, told her to call if she ever saw something strange. She'd tossed it into a drawer and forgotten about it. Until now. Sharon stood, her legs shaking. She had to get back to her apartment. The card might still be there, if the men hadn't destroyed everything already. She moved fast, sticking to the back alleys. When she finally reached her street, the lights in her building were still on, but her door hung open, splintering at the hinges. Her heart sank. Inside, everything was overturned. The couch ripped open. The drawers emptied. Her few photos were torn apart. Whoever had come wasn't looking for money. They were looking for the watch. And they hadn't found it. She clutched it tighter. Then something caught her eye, a single sheet of paper, pinned to the wall with a knife. 3 words, written in red marker. Too late, Sharon. Her knees almost gave out. The room suddenly felt smaller. Claustrophobic. She backed away slowly, eyes on the message, until she reached the door again. Then she turned and ran down the hallway. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't stop. Every step echoed like a heartbeat in the wet streets. The city blurred past, signs, car lights, faces she didn't trust. By the time she reached the edge of downtown, her feet were cut and bleeding. She'd lost one shoe somewhere on the way down the fire stairs. Her hair was plastered to her face. Still, she kept running. Through the downpour, through the fear. Until she reached the flickering light of a small all-night diner, the kind of place where no one asked questions. She slipped inside, dripping water onto the tile. The waitress looked up but said nothing. Sharon took a seat in the back booth, her body shaking. She set the watch on the table, its surface glinting under the fluorescent lights. For a long moment, she just stared at it. Then quietly, she whispered to herself. "What did you give me, Philip?" Outside, a car door closed. She glanced up through the window. A figure stood across the street, barely visible in the rain. Watching her. Her pulse quickened. The waitress turned away for just a moment. When Sharon looked back, the figure was gone. The city clock struck midnight. Somewhere, behind the prison walls, Philip Jones waited for a dawn that might never come. And in a dimly lit diner miles away, Sharon Davis sat alone, clutching a secret powerful enough to shatter everything she thought she knew. The watch ticked softly on the table, steady, unbroken, alive. Then from behind her, a man's voice spoke quietly. "You need to leave. Now." She turned, eyes wide. And the chapter ends in silence. The motel smelled of damp carpet and cigarette smoke. Its flickering neon sign outside buzzed faintly, casting dull red light through the cracked blinds. Sharon sat on the edge of the bed, her body still trembling from the night's chase. Her clothes clung to her skin, soaked and stiff. A small suitcase, borrowed from the diner's lost and found, sat near the door. She hadn't dared to use her credit card, or even her real name when checking in. The man behind the counter hadn't cared. As long as she paid cash, she could have called herself Mary Magdalene, and he would have just nodded. Now, in the quiet, She could finally think. Or try to. She pulled the watch from her pocket and placed it on the nightstand. The ticking was faint, steady, like a heartbeat in the dark. Her reflection in the mirror looked ghostly, eyes ringed with exhaustion, skin pale under the buzzing fluorescent light. Inside this is everything. Philip's voice echoed through her memory again, soft but urgent. She'd replayed those words over and over during her escape, each time asking herself the same question. Everything what? Sharon turned the watch in her hand, examining every edge, every screw. There had to be something, some secret hidden beneath the gleaming surface. The second hand twitched forward, smooth and precise. She took a deep breath, grabbed the small motel screwdriver she'd found in a drawer, and began to pry open the back. It resisted at first, stubborn like a lock guarding a secret. Then, with a faint click, the backplate came loose. Her breath caught. Inside, nestled between the gears, was something impossible, a tiny black chip, no larger than a fingernail, tucked beneath the mechanical components. For a long moment, she just stared at it. "You've got to be kidding me," she whispered. Her fingers trembled as she lifted the chip out carefully and held it to the light. It looked ordinary, plain blank. But the weight of it felt like holding a confession. She sat back, pulse racing. The ticking of the now open watch sounded louder, almost accusing. And then, like the sound of a door creaking open in her mind, the memories came. The mansion. The study. Philip Jones sitting beside her one late afternoon, sunlight pouring through the tall windows, illuminating motes of dust that danced in the air. The sound of a clock chime. "Patience, Sharon," he'd said, his voice warm and calm. "Everything in life has a rhythm. You can't force the truth out of time any more than you can force the hands of a clock." She'd laughed then. She was 19, barefoot, with a mop in her hand and dreams too small to matter. "But you're rich, sir. Can't rich people buy more time?" He'd smiled, that gentle, knowing smile of his. "We can buy distractions, Miss Davis. Not time. Time tells the truth, always." He'd shown her how to open the grandfather clock in the corner of his study, how to wind it without breaking the delicate spring. "Every piece matters," he'd said, adjusting the pendulum. "The smallest gear, the tiniest screw, each one keeps the whole alive. Remove one, and the truth stops ticking." She remembered thinking how strange it was, a billionaire caring about an old clock. But now, sitting in a dim motel room years later, she finally understood. The watch wasn't just a keepsake. It was his message. His way of keeping the truth ticking, even after they'd stopped him. Morning crept in gray and slow. Sharon hadn't slept. She wrapped the microchip in a tissue and tucked it into her pocket. Her mind raced through options. She couldn't take it to the police. Philip's warning had been clear. She couldn't go to the press. They'd twist the story into something monstrous. She needed to see what was on it herself. But where could she access a computer without being traced? Then she remembered, the public library downtown. Old machines, outdated software, no cameras in the corners. Anonymous. Perfect. By the time she reached the library, the city had already come alive. Newsstands screamed headlines about Philip's pending execution. "Billionaire to face justice tomorrow night, final visitor identified as Jamaican housemaid mystery surrounds final request on death row." Sharon pulled her hood tighter and kept walking. Inside, the library was nearly empty, just an elderly man reading the newspaper and a woman typing loudly on an ancient keyboard. She chose a corner terminal, inserted the chip into the computer's USB slot, and held her breath. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then, an unfamiliar symbol appeared on the screen, a golden clock face slowly turning. A prompt followed. "Access restricted. Enter key." Her stomach sank. "Oh, come on," she muttered. She typed a few guesses. Jones. Philip. Time. Truth. Clock. Nothing. Then she tried something else, something only he would have told her. Patient heart. The screen blinked once. Then again. And then. Dozens of folders appeared. Each labeled with strings of letters and numbers. Each marked with a small red icon that read, "Classified." She clicked one at random. It opened a list of names, senators, CEOs, foundation directors. Each name is linked to a document. Offshore accounts. Wire transfers. Shell corporations registered in countries she'd only ever heard of on the news. Her heart pounded harder with every scroll. The next folder held scanned memos between government departments, encrypted conversations about allocations, disbursements, neutralizing potential exposure. And then, videos. 5 of them. The first began with static, then a shaky handheld view of Philip Jones sitting in his study, the same room she'd cleaned hundreds of times. He looked older, tired, the weight of something heavy in his eyes. Across from him sat a younger man, sharp suit, slicked hair. Andrew Keller. His protégé. The one who'd taken over the company after Philip's arrest. Philip's voice was low but clear. You moved the money, Andrew. I checked the ledgers. You shifted charity funds through Cayman accounts, then into the Reed Foundation. I thought it was Thomas's doing until I saw your signature. Andrew leaned forward, smirking slightly. You're chasing shadows, Philip. You're the one they're coming after now, not me. I built this company to help people, not feed the greed of politicians. You think they'll protect you once this blows up? Andrew's expression hardened. You still don't get it. You're not in control anymore. You dug too deep, made the wrong people nervous. Philip stood, voice shaking. I'll expose every one of you. I don't care how powerful they are. Andrew's smile faded into something colder. Then I hope you like orange jumpsuits. The video ended abruptly. Sharon sat frozen, her eyes wide. The next video started automatically. Philip, handcuffed, sitting in an interrogation room. 2 agents across the table. Their badges glinted under the fluorescent lights. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. You're protecting criminals in suits while you destroy the only man who tried to stop them. Mr. Jones, one of the agents said flatly, if you keep claiming this conspiracy nonsense, we'll add obstruction to your charges. It's not nonsense, Philip snapped. I have proof. In the watch. Sharon's breath hitched. In the watch. They'd known. Even back then. And now they were after her for it. The computer screen blurred. Her hands trembled so hard she could barely scroll. The last video was short, only 20 seconds. Philip, looking directly into the camera, eyes hollow but resolute. If you're watching this, I didn't make it. Whoever's holding this chip, don't trust anyone who offers help. The truth will get you killed, but silence will bury you alive. Time, Miss Davis. Time always reveals what men try to hide. The file ended. For a moment, Sharon just sat there, staring at her own reflection in the dark screen. Tears burned at the corners of her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She finally understood. Philip hadn't been asking for forgiveness when he called her to his deathbed. He'd been passing the torch. Passing proof. The world thought he was a murderer. But he'd been a whistleblower. And now, he was a dead man because of it. Her stomach churned as she logged out, removed the chip, and slipped it into her pocket again. Every instinct screamed to destroy it, to throw it into the nearest drain and walk away. But she couldn't. Philip's voice lingered in her head. Don't trust anyone wearing a badge. Keep it safe. Outside, thunder rolled through the clouds. The city seemed darker than before. She walked past rows of people glued to televisions and shop windows, news anchors still dissecting Philip's legacy, calling him corrupt, ruthless, guilty. And all she could think was, they have no idea. The chip in her pocket was more than evidence. It was truth, and truth, she realized, was the most dangerous weapon in the world. By the time she reached the edge of downtown, night had fallen. She ducked into an alley, away from the traffic, and finally let herself collapse against a wall. Rain had begun again, soft at first, then steady. It soaked through her jacket, but she didn't care. She pulled the chip from her pocket and stared at it in the dim light of a street lamp. For the first time since this nightmare began, she wasn't afraid. She was angry. All those years she'd scrubbed his floors, thinking he was just another rich man who'd fallen from grace. All the time she'd overheard him arguing with Thomas Reed, never realizing the danger behind those words. All the pain, the shame, the isolation, it all made sense now. They hadn't punished Philip for murder. They'd executed him for honesty. Sharon clenched her fist around the chip. "My God," she whispered, voice trembling with fury and disbelief. They killed him to protect themselves. And somewhere beyond the gray horizon of the city, A clock chimed 12, marking the moment the truth began to wake. Rain fell like broken glass against the window of room 16. Sharon sat in the dim light, the curtains drawn tight, every sound outside magnified by fear. The old motel smelled of bleach and cigarette smoke. Her nerves were raw from 2 nights without sleep. The microchip lay on the nightstand beside the cheap lamp, the tiny metallic thing that now felt heavier than the world itself. Every so often, headlights swept across the parking lot. She'd peek through the blinds, heart hammering, scanning for faces that didn't belong. She thought she'd covered her tracks, paid cash, switched buses twice, even dumped her old SIM card in a gas station trash bin. But paranoia had a way of whispering louder than logic. And Philip's words replayed endlessly in her mind, "Don't trust anyone wearing a badge." She had no one. No friends in this city. No family. Just the weight of a dying man's secret ticking inside a wristwatch she no longer dared to wear. At dawn, the tension snapped. A black sedan rolled slowly past the motel. It didn't belong there. She froze mid-sip of cold coffee, her eyes following the shape as it idled near the exit before parking across the street. The driver never got out. Sharon's pulse surged. She shoved the chip back into the watch's hidden compartment, stuffed it in her pocket, and grabbed her duffel. She was out the back door in seconds. Her sandals slapped against the wet pavement as she moved toward the highway. By the time she reached the bus stop, the car had started following. No mistaking it now. She didn't look back again until she'd boarded the next city train heading downtown. The train car was crowded, office workers, tourists, a mother with a stroller. It should have made her feel safe, but every reflection in the glass felt like a threat. She stood near the door, her hands trembling, eyes flicking from one passenger to another. When the announcement dinged for the next stop, a woman brushed past her, flashing a discreet badge from inside her jacket. "Sharon Blake," the woman said softly, her voice calm, practiced. Sharon froze. "I'm Agent Naomi Steele. FBI Internal Affairs." The words felt like a trap snapping shut. Naomi's eyes were sharp but kind, her tone low enough that no one else could hear. "You're in danger. You already know that. Please, come with me. We can protect you." Sharon stepped back instinctively. "How did you find me?" "We've been tracking Keller's men," Naomi said. "We intercepted chatter that they're after a woman carrying sensitive evidence. I think we both know what that means." Sharon said nothing, clutching her bag tighter. Naomi lowered her voice further. "Mr. Jones wasn't a criminal. He was set up. You have something that proves that, don't you?" Her stomach flipped. Naomi reached into her coat slowly, not a gun, but an ID wallet. The seal looked authentic. FBI Internal Affairs. But then again, Philip's warning. "Don't trust anyone wearing a badge." Sharon's voice shook. "If you know about the evidence, then you know what happens to the people who get close to it." Naomi nodded. "That's why I'm here. To keep you alive." For a brief, trembling second, Sharon wanted to believe her. The woman's tone was too precise, too gentle, the kind that comforted before betrayal. At the next stop, Naomi motioned toward the exit. "Please. Just 10 minutes. We can talk somewhere safe." Sharon hesitated, eyes darting to the train window. The black sedan from the motel, it was there. Parked near the station entrance. Her pulse spiked. "Move." Naomi hissed, pulling her by the arm. "They found you." The 2 women burst onto the platform, weaving through the crowd. Sharon could hear hurried footsteps behind them, men's voices, the shuffle of pursuit. Naomi led her through a side corridor, into a maintenance stairwell. "Downstairs," she ordered. "There's a service exit." They rushed down the steps 2 at a time. The echo of boots followed. "Who are they?" Sharon gasped. Naomi didn't answer. She kicked open the bottom door. The alley beyond glistened with puddles and steam from subway vents. "Go left," Naomi said. "I'll hold them off." But something in her eyes flickered, something rehearsed. Sharon froze mid-step. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. "Really?" Naomi's jaw clenched. "Because I owe Philip Jones more than you can imagine." Before Sharon could respond, a gunshot cracked above them. Concrete dust rained from the ceiling. Naomi drew her weapon and fired twice toward the stairwell, shouting, "Move now." Sharon ran, sprinting through the narrow alley as the echo of gunfire bounced off the walls. She didn't stop until she reached the street. Meanwhile, in a glass-walled boardroom 10 miles away, Andrew Keller sat before a curved screen showing live news coverage of Philip Jones's impending execution. The anchor's voice was smooth, detached. Despite last-minute appeals, billionaire philanthropist Philip Jones is scheduled for execution this Friday. New protests have erupted outside the state penitentiary. Keller muted the feed. His reflection glowed faintly against the black glass. Impeccably dressed, unmoved. A junior aide entered quietly, a tablet in hand. "Sir, there's been a development." Keller glanced up. "Go on." "Jones's maid. Sharon Blake. She disappeared after the prison visit. Her name just appeared on a federal watch list." For the first time, Keller's composure cracked. His fingers tightened around the pen in his hand. "How?" "We don't know yet. But someone's protecting her." Keller stood, moving to the window that overlooked the city skyline. "If she's found that data, then everything burns," the aide finished nervously. Keller's voice turned cold. "Then we find her before she talks." He pressed a button on his desk phone. "Get Leon." The aide swallowed. "You mean?" "Yes. The cleaner." Back on the street, Sharon ducked into a bookstore cafe, her chest heaving. She leaned against a wall, trying to calm her breathing. Her reflection in the window looked like someone else, wild-eyed, drenched, trembling. She ordered a coffee she wouldn't drink, just to blend in. Across the street, she saw a figure step from a car. Dark coat. Earpiece. She didn't wait. Out the back door, through the kitchen, into another alley. Her feet splashed through puddles as she ran. How are they still finding me? She remembered Philip's watch, the smooth gold band, still in her pocket. Her blood ran cold. A tracker. She stopped under a flickering streetlight and flipped the watch open, inspecting the inner casing. There, a faint red blink from a microbead embedded near the hinge. "Damn it," she hissed, prying it out with a paperclip. She tossed the tracker down a storm drain, praying it was enough. Moments later, a black SUV screeched onto the corner ahead of her. Too late. Naomi appeared from the shadows behind her, gun drawn. "Get down," she shouted. A shot rang out. Sparks erupted from the brick wall inches from Sharon's head. Naomi tackled her behind a dumpster as bullets shredded the alley. "Who are they?" Sharon screamed. "Private contractors," Naomi said between breaths. "Keller's men. They don't arrest, they erase." "Why help me?" Naomi's eyes met hers, hard but honest. "Because Jones was about to expose them. And they killed him for it. Now they want to make sure no one can finish what he started." Sharon's throat tightened. "Then why not take the evidence yourself?" Naomi hesitated, a second too long. The answer was in her silence. "You are one of them," Sharon whispered. Naomi's jaw clenched. "It's not that simple." But Sharon was already running. She darted through the alley, scaling a chain-link fence, ignoring the sting of rust on her palms. Sirens wailed somewhere far off. Maybe police, maybe not. Her lungs burned as she sprinted toward the train yard beyond the industrial park. The sound of engines grew behind her, 2 cars closing in fast. She ducked behind a row of shipping containers, heart slamming against her ribs. A flashlight beam swept across the ground. Voices. "She's on foot, east side." She pressed her back against the steel container, barely daring to breathe. Through the gap, she saw one of them, tall, bald, military build. The way he moved screamed precision. The cleaner. Leon. He scanned the yard methodically, pistol raised, his expression unreadable. When the beam passed, Sharon crawled toward the far end, slipping between containers until she found a small gap leading to the freight platform. She pulled herself up and over just as another light swept past. A horn blared, the night train rolling in. Without thinking, she leapt. Her hands caught the rail of the last car as it moved. She swung up, breath ragged, legs scraping against metal. The train carried her into the dark outskirts of the city. For the first time in days, she was out of sight. But not out of danger. Hours later, She stumbled off the freight line near an abandoned rail yard. Her feet were bleeding, her clothes soaked. She found a payphone near a closed diner, an ancient relic, and called the only number she remembered from Philip's old contacts, Thomas Reed's assistant. It rang twice. Then a woman's voice answered. "Who is this?" "Sharon Blake. I worked for Mr. Jones. Please, he was murdered for what he found." Silence. "Then, if this is about what's on that watch, you need to disappear. Now. They're listening." Click. The line went dead. Sharon stared at the receiver, numb. Even strangers knew. Even whispers of the truth were dangerous. By sunrise, she'd made her way to the riverfront, to the crowds of commuters and morning vendors, blending again into anonymity. Her mind spun. Naomi Steele had found her too fast. Keller's men were already moving. The watch, the files, the money trail, it was all converging towards something bigger than she could comprehend. Philip had died because of this. And she was next on the list. She sank onto a bench, staring at her reflection in the water. For a moment, she considered throwing the watch in, letting it vanish forever. But then she remembered Philip's voice in that cold prison room. "Inside this is everything. Keep it safe. Don't trust anyone wearing a badge." Her hand tightened around the watch. No. She couldn't destroy it. Not now. Not when she was finally starting to understand what he died for. That afternoon, Naomi appeared again, across the plaza, walking slowly, no badge visible this time. "Sharon," she said softly, approaching. "You're running out of places to hide." "Then stop following me," Sharon snapped. Naomi sighed. "I'm not your enemy. Keller has contacts everywhere. He's already buried 3 agents who got too close. Why should I believe you?" "Because the next time he finds you, I won't be there to stop him." Naomi extended a burner phone. "If you want the truth, all of it, call this number tomorrow. Ask for Echo. They'll explain everything Philip couldn't." Sharon didn't move. Naomi placed the phone on the bench beside her, stepped back, and melted into the crowd. As night fell, Sharon walked alone along the riverbank. The city lights shimmered on the surface, fragile, fractured. She slipped the watch back into her pocket, its weight both comfort and curse. A sound behind her, gravel crunching. She turned. A shadow detached itself from the dark, tall, silent. Leon. The muzzle flash came first. She dove sideways, rolling down the embankment as a bullet shattered the lamppost where she'd stood. She ran barefoot now, her shoes lost, the cold cutting through her soles. Another shot whined past her ear. The fire exit door of a nearby warehouse glowed under a red emergency light. She bolted toward it, yanked it open, and slammed it behind her. The echo of her breath filled the concrete stairwell. Then, silence. Until the footsteps began again, steady, deliberate. She gripped the watch so hard it dug into her palm, whispering under her breath. "Philip, please tell me you know how to end this." And as the footsteps drew closer, she pushed through the next door, vanishing into the maze of corridors into the night. The television flickered in the corner of a pawnshop window, muted but screaming through the captions. Philip Jones' execution scheduled, 18 hours to go. Crowds filled the screen. Protesters shouting. Flashing cameras. Guards in riot gear lining the prison fence. Inside the glass, Sharon's reflection stared back at her, gaunt, sleepless, and trembling. The weight of the words hit like a punch to the chest. 18 hours. That was all that stood between Philip Jones and the end. And between truth and silence. She turned away, pulling her hood tighter as rain began to fall. The city was watching a countdown. But no one knew what they were about to bury with him. She found Ethan Price 2 neighborhoods away, in the kind of building that looked condemned from the outside. Boarded windows, flickering neon, a door with 6 locks. He'd been one of her old cleaning clients years ago, a man who never looked her in the eye, who spoke more to his monitors than to people. The rumor was he'd once been a coder for a defense firm before a leak got him blacklisted. Now he lived like a ghost, hiding behind layers of firewalls and paranoia. Sharon knocked 3 times in the rhythm Philip had once used on his study door. Short, long. For a moment, nothing. Then a rasping voice through the speaker. "Who's there?" "It's Sharon. Sharon Blake." Silence again, Then the sound of bolts sliding. The door opened just enough for a pale face to appear. Ethan's eyes darted around nervously. "Christ, I thought you were dead," he muttered, pulling her inside. His apartment looked like a circuit board exploded. Wires snaked across the floor, half a dozen monitors glowed with code, and an electric hum filled the air. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "They're looking for you. It's all over the darknet feeds. Keller's men. The Bureau. Everybody." "I need your help," she said. "It's about Philip." Ethan froze mid-step. "Jones." She nodded and pulled the watch from her pocket. "I think this holds proof that he was innocent. But it's encrypted." Ethan stared at it like it was radioactive. "You brought that here?" "I don't have a choice." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "You never do." For the next hour, he worked in silence, connecting the watch to an adapter, transferring files into his system. Lines of code raced across the screen, his fingers moving with practiced precision. Sharon watched, wringing her hands, the sound of rain tapping against the cracked window. Finally, Ethan leaned back. "You were right. There's data in here. Big data. But this isn't just about one company." "What do you mean?" He turned one monitor toward her. A web of names appeared, government officials, CEOs, bank executives, each connected by thin digital threads. Offshore accounts, shell companies, false charities. In the center of it all, the Arcadia Trust. "That's Philip's foundation," she whispered. Ethan nodded grimly. "Only it's not his. Not anymore. It's been used to funnel money from defense contracts to private militias, election manipulation, black site operations. Billions. Sharon. This is a global machine, and Jones stumbled right into it." Her stomach twisted. He thought he was funding schools. Hospitals. He was, Ethan said. Until Keller and his partners hijacked it. Jones tried to expose them. That's why he was framed. He clicked open a folder labeled Recordings. The screen showed Philip, sitting across from Andrew Keller in his office, the same man from the boardroom. The audio crackled. "Philip, you forged the reports. You moved money under my name." "Keller, I did what was necessary. You built the platform. I built the empire." "Philip, you're killing people." "Keller, and you're naive if you think anyone at the top doesn't." The recording ended with a sharp sound, the click of a door lock. Ethan looked up. "That's your proof. It's enough to bury Keller. Maybe even the president." Sharon's throat went dry. But before she could speak, the lights flickered. Then, a faint beep from one of the monitors. Ethan frowned. What the hell? He began typing rapidly. They found the signal. Someone's pinging the connection. Damn it. Can they trace it here? They already have. The explosion tore through the building like a thunderclap. One moment Sharon was standing behind him. The next, she was thrown backward, glass and smoke and fire swallowing everything. Her ears rang, vision white with shock. She could taste metal in her mouth. The world tilted, the ceiling half gone, the walls on fire. "Ethan!" she screamed, crawling toward the desk. But there was nothing left. Only the burning wreckage of his monitors and a blackened chair. Her hands shook violently as she grabbed the watch, somehow intact, and stumbled toward the door. Outside, flames licked the windows. A car alarm wailed in the distance. Sirens. Sharon ran barefoot through the alley, smoke trailing behind her, coughing so hard she could barely breathe. Every step hurt. Every breath burned. But she didn't stop. Ethan was gone. And now she knew, they weren't trying to silence Philip. They were erasing anyone connected to the truth. By the time she reached the riverfront, dawn was breaking, orange light bleeding through mist. She ducked under an overpass, shivering from the cold and shock. The watch still worked, ticking faintly, indifferent to death. She stared at it, tears streaking through the soot on her face. "He died for this," she whispered. "And now so did you." Her mind reeled with what Ethan had shown her, the map of corruption, the recordings, the reach of the Arcadia Trust. Politicians. Military contracts. Human trafficking. War profiteering masked as philanthropy. A machine built on blood. And Philip's name had been used as its currency. The world believed he was a monster. But he'd been a warning. And she'd been the only one to listen. Somewhere across town, televisions blared with updates from the penitentiary. Security has been tightened ahead of the high-profile execution. Officials confirm all appeals have been denied. Sharon sat in a diner booth, hidden behind a cracked newspaper, trying to stop her hands from shaking long enough to sip coffee. The waitress refilled her cup without looking twice. On the table beside her sat a burner phone Naomi had left. She stared at it for a long moment, then powered it on. A single number appeared in the contacts, Echo. She hesitated, remembering Naomi's warning. Then she typed a message. I have proof Philip Jones was framed. They killed Ethan Price. I need to go public. No reply came. She left a $5 bill and walked out. The city moved like nothing had happened, traffic roaring, commuters scrolling through headlines, coffee carts steaming on corners. No one knew they were hours from history being rewritten. She needed a voice big enough to break through the noise. And then she remembered what Philip had said in the prison visitation room, just before the guards pulled him away. If anything happens to me, find Maya Torres. She's the only one left who still tells the truth. Maya Torres, independent journalist, fearless, relentless. The woman who'd once brought down a senator with a single exposé. Sharon had cleaned her apartment once years ago. She'd remembered the woman's walls lined with clippings and photos, the smell of stale coffee and adrenaline. She still had her old business card, tucked in her wallet. Maya Torres Investigations. Truth has teeth. By mid-morning, Sharon reached a public library, her makeshift war room. She sat at a corner computer, fingers trembling as she inserted the watch's chip and began pulling the files again, one by one. Encrypted copies appeared on the screen. The data was there, intact. Ethan's death hadn't been for nothing. She uploaded everything to a secure drive, labeled it Arcadia_leak, and drafted a single message to Maya Torres. I have evidence that proves Philip Jones was framed. People are dying. Please, help me before they kill me too. She attached one of the videos, the confrontation between Philip and Keller, and hit send. Then she sat back, trembling, heart pounding so hard it hurt. If Maya opened that file, the story would ignite like wildfire. Outside, thunder rolled, the sky heavy with incoming rain. Sharon gathered her things, but something made her pause. Through the glass doors, across the street, a man stood watching her. Black coat. Earpiece. Leon. Her stomach dropped. She bolted from the chair, darting through the stacks toward the emergency exit. Footsteps followed. She burst out into the alley, lungs burning, cutting through side streets until the sounds faded behind her. Her body ached. Her mind screamed. But she couldn't stop now. She had 14 hours left. 14 hours until the execution. 14 hours until Philip Jones died, and the truth with him. By sunset, the story had begun to move. A single tweet from Maya's verified account appeared on Sharon's phone. If what I just received is real, the world's about to learn who really runs it. It was enough to give Sharon a flicker of hope. But hope was dangerous. As she slipped into the shadows of a bus terminal, clutching the watch in her phone, she knew the countdown wasn't just for Philip anymore. It was for her. And time, the very thing Philip had taught her to respect, was running out. Thunder cracked overhead. Rain poured in sheets. Sharon boarded a night bus headed toward Maya's last known address on the city's east side. She sat in the back, soaked and shivering, staring out the window at the blur of lights. The hum of the engine and the rhythm of the rain blended into a single thought pulsing through her. Finish this. Before they finish you. Her fingers brushed the watch. The second hand ticked relentlessly forward, each movement slicing closer to the end. 18 hours had become 12. And the clock was still running. The old printing press warehouse sat on the edge of the industrial district, a forgotten relic of ink and iron. Moonlight bled through broken skylights, casting pale streaks across rusted machinery and stacks of yellowed newspapers. Sharon moved through the shadows cautiously, every sound echoing too loudly. Her heart beat in uneven bursts as she clutched the watch in one hand and a small flash drive in the other. A faint light flickered from deeper inside the building. Sharon! A voice called softly. She turned, and there she was. Maya Torres. The journalist's face was sharper than Sharon remembered, older, more lined, but her eyes still burned with the same fierce intelligence that had once exposed an oil conglomerate for poisoning an entire town. Maya stepped forward, trench coat soaked from rain, camera bag slung over one shoulder. "You weren't kidding in your email," she said. "You look like hell." Sharon almost laughed but didn't. "You should see the other guys." Maya gave a quick nod. "Come on. Let's see what you've got." They set up in the warehouse office, an old room with cracked glass walls and a single flickering lamp powered by a generator. Maya pulled out a rugged laptop, her fingers flying over the keys as Sharon handed her the flash drive. "I mirrored everything from the watch," Sharon explained. "Files, recordings, bank logs. Ethan helped me decode some of it before." Her voice faltered. Maya didn't press. She'd seen that kind of grief before, the kind born from seeing good people die for the truth. The laptop hummed to life. Rows of files appeared, names, dates, transactions. Maya's eyes widened slightly. "This is Jesus, Sharon. This is a map of the whole damn government." "It's not just the government," Sharon said quietly. "It's the banks. The corporations. The people who decide which wars are fought and who profits from them." Maya clicked through folders labeled Arcadia Trust, Senate OPS, Keller recordings. Each file unfolded like a confession. Money moved through fake charities to fund black projects, offshore weapons deals, data manipulation, bribery. Sharon watched as the truth came alive in scrolling numbers and documents. Philip Jones hadn't been laundering money for himself. He'd been the scapegoat for an empire that couldn't afford exposure. Maya whistled low under her breath. "You realize this could collapse half the political system if it goes public." "That's why they killed him," Sharon whispered. "And Ethan. And Thomas Reed before that." Maya looked up sharply. "Reed, the partner who was murdered?" Sharon nodded. "Philip didn't do it. Keller did. Under orders from someone higher." "Prove it." Sharon pointed to the last folder. "That one. The video is titled Directive 12. Maya opened it. The footage began with static, then focused on Andrew Keller, seated in what looked like a private jet. The timestamp was from 2 years ago. He looked nervous, sweating, pacing. A man's voice off-screen, calm and commanding, spoke. "Senator Hart, off-screen, you understand what's at stake, Andrew. If Jones opens his mouth, it's not just you that burns. Keller, he's like a father to me. You're asking me to destroy him. Senator Hart, I'm asking you to save yourself. Frame him. We'll handle the rest." Keller slumped into a seat, burying his face in his hands. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "Keller, how do I live with that?" "Senator Hart, you don't. You just survive it." The recording ended. Maya sat back slowly. "That's it. That's the smoking gun." Sharon stared at the screen, her throat tightening. The air felt too thin to breathe. "He was innocent," she said, her voice cracking. "He spent years behind bars for something he didn't do. And now they're going to kill him anyway." Maya closed the laptop gently. "He knew the cost, Sharon. Men like Philip Jones don't play with fire without expecting to get burned." "But he trusted me," Sharon said. "He gave me the watch. He thought I'd keep it safe, and I couldn't. Ethan's dead. They're watching me. And he's hours away from execution." Tears slid down her cheeks. She didn't even notice them until Maya handed her a napkin from her bag. Maya's voice softened. "You kept it longer than anyone else could have. That means something." Sharon shook her head. "It means I'm next." Outside, rain hammered against the roof. Thunder rolled across the sky. Maya turned the laptop toward her again. "If we broadcast this, there's no taking it back. These people, Keller, the senators, the donors, they won't just come after you. They'll come after everyone who touches it." "I don't care," Sharon said, surprising herself with the steadiness in her voice. "Philip once told me time tells the truth whether we want it to or not. It's already ticking, isn't it?" Maya studied her for a moment, then smiled faintly. "He said that. He said a lot of things I didn't understand until now. Then let's make sure the world hears him." They spent the next 2 hours cross-verifying every document, matching digital signatures, tracing offshore accounts, confirming coded transactions. The deeper they went, the uglier it became. Defense contractors funding wars under the guise of charitable intervention. Billion-dollar banks laundering political bribes. Media moguls paid to bury scandals before election cycles. Every system of power was complicit. Maya recorded narration as she worked, her voice calm but electric with purpose. What you are about to see may change how you understand every donation, every election, every war fought in the name of freedom. Sharon watched her work in silence, her mind a storm of fear and grief. Every click of Maya's keyboard felt like hammering another nail into a coffin, the coffin of the illusion she'd once believed the world ran on justice. Across town, in a high-rise boardroom overlooking the city, Andrew Keller swirled whiskey in a crystal glass. The television played muted coverage of the prison countdown. Behind him, aides murmured updates about markets, press statements, and security alerts. Keller didn't look concerned. His tie was loose, his tone bored. 18 hours, he said quietly. After that, this whole nightmare finally dies. An aide entered, face pale. Sir, we have a situation. Keller turned. What kind of situation? Sharon Blake. She's resurfaced. With a journalist. For the first time that night, Keller's calm cracked. Where? Somewhere in the industrial sector. We're tracking her signal now. Keller set his glass down with a sharp clink. Find them. Before she finds a camera. Back in the warehouse, the printer that hadn't worked in decades now whirred to life, spitting out pages of incriminating data. The air smelled of dust and ozone. Sharon's hands trembled as she helped stack the papers. What if they stop us before it goes live? They won't, Maya said without looking up. I've mirrored the upload to 5 different satellite servers. Once I hit publish, it's everywhere. Even if they shoot us right here, they can't erase it. Sharon nodded, but couldn't shake the feeling that someone was already watching them. Every creak in the metal beams above made her flinch. Every gust of wind against the windows felt like footsteps. Maya's voice pulled her back. You okay? Sharon forced a smile. No. But keep going. At 10:47 p.m., the laptop chimed. The upload was complete. Maya exhaled slowly. It's ready. All I have to do is push this button, and the story goes live to my network feed. After that, every major outlet in the country will have to pick it up. Sharon stared at the glowing cursor. Her hand drifted toward it, then hesitated. What if this gets people killed? She whispered. Maya met her gaze. People are already dying, Sharon. The only difference is now the world will know why. The words hit her like a slap of cold air. She nodded once, swallowing hard. Then do it. Maya clicked upload. A small progress bar appeared. Transmitting to global network, 12%, 27%, 49%. The generator sputtered once. Then, a sound outside. Metal scraping. Footsteps. Maya froze. You hear that? Sharon's pulse spiked. They found us. Outside the warehouse, 2 black SUVs idled silently in the rain. Headlights off. Engines running. Shadows moved between the pillars, men in tactical gear, moving with military precision. Inside, Maya killed the light. The room fell into darkness, broken only by the glow of the laptop screen. Keep it running, she whispered. No matter what happens. Sharon crouched beside her, clutching the watch like a talisman. They could hear the faint murmur of voices outside. Boots crunching on gravel. Upload, 72%. 83%. 91%. The door handle rattled. Maya drew a small pistol from her bag, not for show, but for insurance. Stay behind me. The metal door burst open with a deafening crash. Light flooded the room. Sharon ducked as bullets shredded the glass walls, sending sparks and paper flying. Maya fired twice, covering the laptop as the screen blinked. Upload complete. The sound of sirens echoed faintly in the distance, growing louder. Maya turned to Sharon, shouting over the chaos. It's done. The story's live. Sharon looked up, eyes wide. Then they'll come for us harder. Maya smiled grimly. Good. That means they're scared. As they scrambled toward the back exit, Sharon glanced through the shattered window one last time. In the distance, she could see the faint lights of the penitentiary through the rain, glowing against the horizon like a false sunrise. Somewhere in that fortress, Philip Jones was being served his final meal. The last supper of a man the world thought was guilty. And here she was, his last witness, finally giving him the justice he'd died waiting for. She turned away, clutching the watch close to her heart. Time always tells the truth, she whispered. And outside, the night roared with sirens as the first copies of the Arcadia files hit the world. The world was holding its breath. Across the nation, screens flickered with the same image, the stone-gray facade of Blackridge Penitentiary, its floodlights cutting through a rainstorm that refused to end. Reporters huddled under umbrellas, microphones trembling from the wind. Behind them, protesters chanted and prayed, their candles hissing in the rain. Inside, in a sterile observation room lined with bulletproof glass, a single chair waited. Philip Jones sat in it. His face was gaunt, but his eyes, those deep, steady eyes, still carried the quiet defiance of a man who'd already made peace with the truth. The clock above the chamber read 11:43 p.m. 17 minutes to midnight. The time of his execution. Across the city, in a basement newsroom, Maya Torres had turned into an impromptu broadcast center, cables tangled across the floor like veins feeding life into a single laptop. Rain hammered the roof. Sharon paced in front of the monitors, heart racing so fast she could barely think. Maya, how long until it's live? 5 minutes, Maya replied, typing furiously. I'm patching into 3 independent satellite feeds and 2 backup relays. Once we go live, it'll hit the airwaves before they can stop us. Sharon's hands trembled. What if they pull the plug? Maya didn't look up. Then we make enough noise that it doesn't matter. The screens in front of them were already filled with the faces of anchors from around the world. BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera, NBS, each network counting down to the same story, the execution of Philip Jones, billionaire philanthropist turned criminal mastermind. Sharon could hardly breathe. She thought of the watch Philip had given her, now lying beside the laptop. The faint tick inside it felt louder with every second. It wasn't just time counting down anymore. It was true. At Blackridge, Philip's attorney, Daniel Green, stood behind the glass, pressing his palms against it. Philip, he said through the intercom, voice cracking, we're still waiting on the appeal. Maya Torres' team says they have evidence going live any minute now. Philip smiled faintly. Daniel, when has the truth ever arrived early? The guards moved methodically, strapping him down with sterile precision. Philip tilted his head slightly toward the observation window, as though he could see beyond it, beyond the cameras, the walls, the nation watching him die. Tell Sharon, he said softly, that she kept her promise. The warden glanced up at the digital clock. 11:52 p.m. 8 minutes. Back in the city, Maya hit the final key. We're on, she whispered. A new image flashed across televisions nationwide, interrupting every major network feed mid-sentence. The words "Live Investigation," the Arcadia files filled the screen. Maya's voice cut through the static. This is Maya Torres. What you're about to see has been verified, encrypted, and independently sourced. These files implicate top political, corporate, and defense figures in a global web of corruption and murder. The man about to be executed tonight, Philip Jones, was framed to protect them. The first documents rolled on screen: bank transfers, offshore accounts, video confessions. A photo of Senator Hart appeared, followed by CEOs from Systec Global, Arcadia Trust, and Apex Defense. Then came the recording of Andrew Keller on the private jet, his voice shaking as he admitted to framing his mentor under orders. Across the nation, living rooms fell silent. In the warden's office at Blackridge, a television crackled with the same feed. The warden froze, staring at the screen. What the hell? His phone rang. Warden, this is the federal court in D.C., a voice said breathlessly. We've just received a stay order. Effective immediately, halt the execution of Philip Jones. The warden's blood ran cold. You're kidding. Do it now. The president's office is involved. We're verifying the files live on air. The warden slammed the phone down and turned to his deputy. Get the call to the chamber. Stop it. The deputy ran. In the observation room, the clock ticked to 11:58 p.m. The priest finished his prayer. The witnesses shifted uneasily as the news broadcast flickered on a small corner television, Maya's voice cutting through the silence. Philip turned his head slightly, listening. Through the static, he heard her say his name. Philip Jones was not the villain they made him out to be. He was the scapegoat for the empire he helped build. And tonight, that empire is burning. He smiled. A small, almost imperceptible curve of his lips. The warden burst into the control room. "Hold it. We have a federal stay order." But the chief technician was already reaching for the lever. "What?" "The system lives. We can't stop it once it cycles." "Then unplug it." "It's too late." The clock hit 11 hours 59 minutes and 42 seconds. A metallic click echoed through the chamber. Philip exhaled once, slow, calm, certain. "The truth," he whispered, eyes lifting to the ceiling, "always finds a way." The lever dropped. And the world went still. In the basement, Sharon saw it happen. The feed on one of the monitors switched from Maya's broadcast to live coverage of the execution. The anchor's voice trembled. "We are receiving unconfirmed reports that a federal injunction arrived seconds too late." Sharon's knees gave out. She collapsed beside the table, her fingers clawing at the cold floor. "No, no, no, no." Maya knelt beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "He knew," Maya whispered. "He must have known it would end like this." Sharon shook her head, sobbing. "He trusted us. He thought we'd stop it. We were seconds away, seconds." On the screen, the anchor's voice faltered again. "And we're now seeing public reaction across the country as the Arcadia files continue to spread. Major networks are confirming the authenticity of the evidence released by journalist Maya Torres." The studio lights flickered. The broadcast servers were overheating under the weight of global traffic. Twitter, YouTube, Reddit, all bursting with clips of the files, the recordings, the ledger scans. The names of powerful men and women scrolling endlessly. #ArcadiaTruth began trending worldwide within minutes. At the White House, aides screamed into phones as stock markets crashed overnight. In boardrooms and penthouses, men who once thought themselves untouchable smashed televisions and burned documents that no longer mattered. Police units surrounded corporate towers. Warrants were issued. Senator Hart disappeared from his estate in Virginia. Andrew Keller's jet was grounded before dawn. The empire that had murdered Philip Jones was collapsing in real time. And Sharon could barely lift her head to watch it happen. Hours later, she stood alone on the rooftop of the warehouse, dawn breaking through the clouds in pale streaks of gray and gold. The city was eerily quiet, stunned into silence by the revelation that the world's wealthiest and most powerful had been playing gods in the dark. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Unknown, he was proud of you." No signature. No traceable ID. But somehow she knew. She closed her eyes, clutching the watch against her chest. It ticked softly, the sound steady and eternal. Later that morning, Maya stood before a dozen cameras, her face pale but resolute. Last night, a man died for the truth. His name was Philip Jones. The files he helped protect have exposed one of the largest corruption networks in modern history. This is not the end of his story, it's the beginning of ours. The crowd erupted in applause and outrage. Protesters marched through the streets, carrying candles and signs that read "Time tells the truth" and "Justice for Jones." Somewhere in that sea of faces, Sharon watched from a distance, her hood pulled low, tears glistening under the morning sun. She didn't need the world to see her. She just needed Philip to know it wasn't in vain. That night, a clip surfaced online, grainy security footage from the prison hallway, leaked anonymously. It showed Philip being led to the chamber. He turned to one of the guards, smiled faintly, and said something the mic barely caught. "Tell her, she was right to believe." The internet replayed those words millions of times. For some, it was martyrdom. For others, redemption. For Sharon, it was both. Weeks passed. Governments fell. CEOs resigned. Investigations exploded across continents. And somewhere in a quiet cemetery outside Kingston, Jamaica, a single grave stood beneath an olive tree. Philip Jones, 1972 to 2025, the truth always finds a way. Sharon placed the watch beside the stone, letting it tick one last time before falling silent. Behind her, Maya waited in the shade. "You sure you want to leave it?" she asked. Sharon nodded. "It was never mine to keep." They stood in silence for a long moment. Then Maya spoke softly. "You know, some people think truth is like a bullet, fast, deadly, unstoppable. But it's not." Sharon turned. "Then what is it?" Maya smiled faintly. "It's time. It just keeps moving until it reaches the right person." Sharon exhaled, looking at the horizon. The clouds were parting. "Then it's his time," she said. Finally. Hours later, Maya's live feed played across the globe again, an epilogue to the story that had shaken the world. Philip Jones died seconds before the world learned his truth. His death ended one story, but his evidence began another, an investigation now spanning 14 nations, 42 indictments, and countless protests demanding reform. One man's silence became humanity's awakening. Back in the empty warehouse where it all began, the old generator sat silent, the hum long gone. But on the dusty table, a single screen flickered to life, a system rebooting itself. A hidden file decrypted automatically. For Sharon. Her name in Philip's handwriting. A single sentence inside. "If you're reading this, it means the world finally heard me. Thank you for giving me back my time." Sharon would never say how long she cried that night. But when she finally looked up, the rain had stopped. The storm was over. And somewhere beyond the city, beyond the cameras and headlines and chaos, the truth she had fought for finally stood still, quiet, unshakable and free. The world didn't sleep that night. By dawn, cities were burning with candlelight instead of rage. Crowds gathered in every capital, New York, London, Kingston, Lagos, Tokyo, each holding signs that read, "Time tells the truth." Justice for Philip Jones. No more silence. Helicopters thundered over Washington as reporters broadcast live from the steps of Congress. The Marble Plaza was covered in flowers, candles, and hastily scribbled notes from strangers. He died for the truth. He made us look closer. He woke us up. And for the first time in years, the words justice system didn't feel like an oxymoron, they felt like a challenge. In the early hours, federal agents raided Keller Holdings. Andrew Keller, once the golden protege, was found at a private airstrip outside Miami, his jet fueled and ready. When the agents surrounded him, he tried one last lie. "I'm innocent," he said, voice trembling. "You don't know what you're doing." But they did. The files Sharon and Maya released left no ambiguity. His signature on the forged transfers, his voice in the recorded confession, his name woven through the same offshore accounts that had drowned Philip's reputation. As they cuffed him, he looked up at the dark sky. It wasn't supposed to end like this. The lead agent replied quietly, neither was he. At Blackridge Penitentiary, the air was heavy with something that wasn't quite grief, but not peace either. The warden stood in Philip's empty cell. The bed was neatly made. The Bible opens to the book of Ecclesiastes. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven. The warden ran a hand along the bars, whispering to no one, "I'm sorry, Jones." Outside the prison, a mountain of flowers, letters, and candles stretched across the gates. Someone had painted across the sidewalk in bold white letters, "He died telling the truth." News channels flooded with updates. Breaking, Senator Hart under investigation for treason and financial crimes. Breaking, Apex Defense CEO steps down amid corruption probe. Breaking, Department of Justice to reform death penalty procedures. Every revelation felt like a pulse through the nation's conscience, steady, painful, necessary. But amid all the noise, one voice was missing. Sharon Davis. For a week, she was everywhere and nowhere. Maya had offered her protection, even fame. "You could tell your story," she said. "The world wants to hear from you." But Sharon had only shaken her head. The world already heard what mattered. She left that night before dawn, carrying a small duffel bag and the faint echo of her own footsteps. By the time the media realized she was gone, she had already crossed an ocean. 3 months later, the Jamaican coast shimmered under the late afternoon sun. The tide rolled in slow and heavy, its rhythm unhurried, unchanging. A small cottage stood at the edge of the cliffs, white paint peeling, a wind chime singing softly by the door. Sharon stood barefoot on the sand, the hem of her dress brushing against the surf. The air smelled of salt and hibiscus. In her palm rested Philip's watch, still ticking. She turned it over gently, her thumb tracing the faint scratch near the clasp. Time had weathered it, but it still kept a perfect rhythm. Just like him. Just like the truth. Inside the cottage, an old TV flickered with the evening news. The signal faded in and out, but the voice of the anchor was unmistakable. In the wake of the Philip Jones revelations, a series of historic reforms have swept through the United States government. The Justice Integrity Act, passed unanimously today, will overhaul the death penalty system and establish independent oversight for corruption cases. The broadcast shifted to footage of Congress standing in silence as the new bill was signed. Then a brief montage, Philip's smiling face during a charity event, a clip of his foundation building homes in Haiti, the words "a legacy restored" written across the screen. Sharon turned up the volume. Officials say the reforms were inspired by the Philip Jones case, a tragedy that sparked a movement for transparency and accountability across the world. Her eyes glistened. She stepped closer, as if proximity could somehow make it more real. Philip's name, once whispered with suspicion, was now spoken with reverence. They had rewritten his ending. As the broadcast cut to commercials, the sea wind carried through the open window, rustling the curtains like pages turning. Sharon walked back to the shore. The sun was setting, molten gold bleeding into indigo. She watched the horizon for a long time before whispering, "You told the truth, Mr. Jones." Her voice trembled slightly, but there was strength beneath it now. "And I made sure the world heard it." She closed her hand around the watch, pressing it to her chest. The waves answered with a quiet rhythm, like a heartbeat. In Washington, Maya Torres stood on the courthouse steps, facing a sea of microphones. Philip Jones' story is not about wealth, corruption, or death. It's about the courage to speak when silence is safer. A maid. A watch. A secret buried in plain sight. That's all it took to remind us that truth, no matter how late it arrives, still changes everything. The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. But Sharon was not there to see it. Kingston, Jamaica, 1 year later. A young fisherman jogged up the beach, holding a folded newspaper. "Miss Sharon," he called. "You see the paper today?" She smiled faintly. "You know I don't read much these days." He handed it to her anyway. The headline read, "Global Court Formed to Investigate Corruption in the Philip Jones Scandal." And beneath it, a photo of Maya Torres at the UN summit, speaking before a world united by outrage and by hope. Sharon looked at the headline for a long time before folding the paper neatly and tucking it under her arm. "Good news travels slow," she murmured. "But it still travels." That evening, she sat on the porch, the horizon blazing orange as the sun dipped beneath the water. She opened Philip's watch one last time. The second hand ticked with that steady, patient rhythm she had come to love. Inside the lid, faintly etched beneath the surface, was an inscription she had never noticed before. "For those who keep the world turning." Her eyes filled again, but this time, the tears didn't fall. She smiled. Because even the invisible had been seen. In the distance, church bells rang across the village. Children played in the sand. A radio from a nearby shop played softly, Maya's voice again, now hosting a global broadcast. The story of the Philip Jones case reminds us that no matter how deep the lies, truth is like the tide, it always returns. Sharon laughed quietly. "You always liked your metaphors, Maya." Then she stood, walking toward the edge of the surf. The wind lifted her hair as she held the watch out to the sea. She paused, then placed it gently into the water. The tide took it slowly, carefully, as if understanding what it carried. It glimmered once beneath the surface, then vanished into the deep. For a moment, Sharon just stood there, her feet sinking into the wet sand. She thought about the mansion she once cleaned, the marble floors she used to polish until she could see her reflection in them, proof she existed in a world that didn't notice her. And she thought of Philip, sitting in his study, showing her how to fix the old grandfather clock. "Time is patient," he'd said. "It waits for the right moment to tell the truth." Now she finally understood. As night fell, the stars rose over the Caribbean like quiet witnesses. Sharon turned back toward her cottage, the sound of the waves following her like an old song. Inside, The TV played one last story before the signal faded. 1 year after his death, the Philip Jones Foundation has rebuilt schools, funded journalism grants, and established legal aid programs for the wrongfully convicted. His story, once a tragedy, has become a movement. The reporter's tone softened. No one knows the name of the woman who exposed the conspiracy, but the world calls her the maid who changed a nation. The TV flickered once, then went black. Sharon smiled in the silence. The title didn't matter. The credit didn't matter. The truth did. She walked out once more, the moon silvering the sea, and whispered into the wind. "Rest easy, Mr. Jones. The world knows now." The wind caught her words and carried them far, across waves, across continents, into the echo of every voice that had ever been silenced. And in that stillness, the faintest sound seemed to rise from the water. The steady, rhythmic tick of a watch. Time, telling the truth. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and even more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.